Welcome to our explainer. Today, we're going to put on our architect hats and dig into a really fascinating question. How can two sacred libraries, the Jewish Tanakh and the Christian Old Testament, have almost the exact same books, but end up telling two very different stories? Well, the secret, it's all in the blueprint. It's a fantastic question, right? Because you think, hey, same books, same story. But it turns out that's not the case at all. How you arrange a library of sacred texts completely changes the narrative. It's the difference between a story that ends with a powerful call to action and one that leaves you on a massive cliffhanger. So to really get this, we've got to start with the original blueprint. Let's explore the architecture of the Hebrew Bible, which is known as the Tanakh. The name Tanakh isn't just some random word. It's actually a map. It's an acronym, a word made from the first letters of its three major sections: T for Torah, N for Nevi'im, and K for Ketuvim. And this structure isn't just for organizing things. It's deeply theological. Each part plays a very specific role in telling the grand story. This three-part journey is incredibly logical when you think about it. It kicks off with the Torah. That's God's core instruction for the people of Israel. Then you get the Nevi'im, which dives into Israel's history. You know, all the ups and downs, but it's all seen through the lens of how they did or didn't live up to that instruction. And finally, it wraps up with the Ketuvim, which is this beautiful collection of writings, poems, and wisdom about how to actually live a faithful life. Okay, now this is where it gets super interesting. Take a look at the Nevi'im, the prophets. You see books like Joshua, Judges, Samuel, and Kings. Now, if you opened a Christian Old Testament, you'd find those books in a section called History. But here, they're considered prophetic. What that tells us is that they're not just a dry record of what happened. They're meant to be read as a divinely inspired interpretation of that history, teaching really important lessons about the covenant with God. All right, let's switch gears and look at the second blueprint, the one for the Christian Old Testament. In this case, the architects used the same basic materials, the same books, but they designed a whole new structure with a very different end goal in mind. So instead of three sections, the Christian Old Testament is arranged into four. A great way to think about it is like a four-act play. Act 1 is the law. Act 2 walks you through the history of Israel. Act 3 is a pause for reflection with all the wisdom literature. And all of it builds to a final climactic fourth act, the prophets. So here's the crucial point. We are not talking about adding or taking away any books. It's all about reshelving them. Books that were in the prophets and writing sections of the Tanakh get reorganized to create these new categories like history and wisdom. But the single biggest architectural change is taking all the prophetic books and moving them to the very, very end of the library. This slide really lets you see the two blueprints side by side. On the left, the Tanakh presents a cycle. You get instruction, then a historical reflection on that instruction, and finally, wisdom for living it out. On the right, the Old Testament creates this straight, linear path: law, then history, then wisdom, that builds and builds toward a massive prophetic finale. And now we get to the heart of it. Why does this architectural difference matter so much? Because it creates two completely different endings, and that changes the entire message and direction of the whole collection. In the Jewish canon, the final book you read is 2 Chronicles. After all the history, the triumphs, the painful exile, the tragedy, the story closes with this incredibly powerful message of return and rebuilding. These are the very last words of the Hebrew Bible. It's a royal decree, a command. It's a call to action. It says, the exile is over, and the work of rebuilding our community and the temple can start again, right now. Let him go up. It's an instruction for the present moment. So the focus of this ending is all about the ongoing real life of the people in their covenant with God. The story isn't really over because life keeps going. The task is to get back to the land and get to work. Now let's look at that other blueprint. Because all the prophets were moved to the end, the Christian canon doesn't finish with 2 Chronicles. No, it concludes with the very last of the prophets, a book called Malachi. And listen to these final words. It's not a command for today. It's a prophecy. It's a promise about a future event. It's a declaration that someone else is coming to prepare the way for God. It's a giant arrow pointing forward. You see what that does? It creates this absolutely massive cliffhanger. The Old Testament doesn't end with a feeling of completion, but with this powerful sense of anticipation. It's a story waiting for its sequel. This architectural choice brilliantly turns the entire collection into a prelude that points directly to the very next page, the New Testament. So, what's the big takeaway from all this? I mean, this isn't just an ancient history lesson. This whole exercise teaches us a really profound lesson about the power of perspective and how the way we frame a story can change absolutely everything. Here's the core lesson: order matters. As we've just seen, how we arrange the facts of a story fundamentally changes its meaning. Both communities use the exact same texts, but organize them to tell their own true yet very distinct narratives. And recognizing that different ways of seeing things can both be valid, well, that's a powerful life skill. In Jewish wisdom, this ties right into the idea of developing our character traits, or midat. The specific trait we can practice here is dan la shechut zechut, which means judging favorably. Instead of seeing one biblical arrangement as right and the other as wrong, this practice pushes us to understand the purpose and the beauty behind both blueprints. It's all about making a real effort to see the world from someone else's point of view before we rush to judgment. So here's our challenge for this week. The next time you come across a point of view that's different from your own, whether it's from a friend, a family member, or something you read online, just pause. Instead of jumping to disagree, ask yourself, what's their blueprint? How have they arranged the facts to get to their conclusion? What parts of the story are they focusing on? Trying to understand their architecture is the first, most important step to building a bridge of empathy and understanding. Thank you for joining us for this complete journey through the Pardes. We hope these ancient truths help you and your family improve your own dimensions this week. If you enjoyed this full chapter deep dive, please like, subscribe, and share which part of the journey touched your soul in the comments. We'll see you in the next chapter.